Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Dame podcast. This time is the long-awaited Breath of the Wild review / discussion. We're going to start by introducing again this wonderful group of people we have. There's myself, who may or may not be so wonderful. I'm Raid, Wonder Raid, joined by Jellyfishin, as always. There we go. And this time, officially joining the discussion is my wife, who goes by Sosi or Sosito, whichever she prefers at the time.
Princess Sosidon.
Anyways, whoa, Sosidon. Whoa. So on that note, this is a review discussion. We already gave some initial thoughts in a previous podcast, if I'm not mistaken. And
a little bit, yeah.
This time, all of us have finished the game, and this, as being review and an open discussion, we will not be holding back on spoilers. There will be spoilers. We will be talking about the whole game. We have no idea if this will even encapsulate all of our... well, it's doubtful this will encapsulate all of our thoughts on everything.
Game's too big.
Right. But we at least wanted to give it the best dang shot we could do. So, let's just get started, I guess, reviewing this game. Let's start just with a little preface. Sosi and I played it together. We
entirely together, except minus like some random farming parts.
Yeah, and like there were a couple areas that, like, I generally did most of the exploring, but like we were there together, and most of the time she would be like, "Hey, what's over there?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't see that. Let's check it out," and stuff like that.
Cool.
All right, so I'm gonna start with this question just to get everything rolling. Obviously, Breath of the Wild was not a game that came out quietly. Within the first, as soon as the review embargo stopped, like the
Boom.
Glowing reviews started pouring out, and I mean, everyone was talking about how it's one of the greatest games ever made.
And the fact that people said that it might be better than Ocarina of Time is like video game blasphemy in some circles.
Right, committing all sorts of review blasphemy.
Well, that happens every Zelda game.
Yeah, Skyward Sword got apparently a lot of 10s, but it is somewhat of a different situation. Anyways, so let's just start with the question: how is Breath of the Wild a good game? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fairly established that it's a good game.
Well, there's people who don't like it, but
people who don't like freedom and exploration.
In America, is that what you're gonna say? Communists? Is that what we're talking?
Royalists.
Now,
the Empire.
Liking Breath of the Wild. Part of Ellis Island is... part of Breath of the Wild, or part of Ellis Island is you have to play Breath of the Wild to immigrate to this country.
And like
Did you like it?
Yeah, you have to give a review. Did you like it?
Get out of here.
How much time did you spend climbing trees?
How many quarks did you find?
How many
you have
quarks?
to prove that you can get off the Great Plateau and actually be free.
Right. Because they're like, this game
the
embodies
Great Plateau symbolizes your mind. You
Right.
gotta expand it.
But no, Jellyfish, what do you think? What do you think about the game? Do you think it's a good game or not? Or where do you?
Do I think it's a good game?
Yeah.
I think it is a great game.
Here, then let me rephrase the question for both of you. Do you think it deserves those glowing reviews? Like, do you think you agree with those reviews? Do you think after that you've played it, finished it, do you find yourself thinking the same thing? Are you not quite as blown away as you thought?
You know, when we started the game, I was definitely like feeling 10 the whole way. But I feel like since, especially like getting towards the end, and also like just marinating it for a couple weeks and talking about it, I definitely think it's a solid 9. Like, I would never give it less than a 9. But I guess it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to give it 10 because to me that's saying it's perfect, but it's not perfect.
Okay.
I'm one of those people who have a hard time giving 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Jellyfishing?
Okay. So yeah, I would say there were certain things that, as a Zelda game, I was expecting that did not exceed my expectations, but as a game overall, it far exceeded my expectations for the game. And I think
I
it
think
was
I would agree with
done
that.
very well for a game that was, I mean, for a structured game like Zelda to go out into open world like the way it did it very well, and it was very successful, and I loved it. So that's my thoughts on how the game overall is.
I find myself, I definitely agree with both of you, and it's and I just kind of find myself like, if someone comes to me and is like, hey, should I play Breath of the Wild? I would say absolutely, no question. And I have a brother-in-law, and he and my sister would I mean they have familiarity with games, but might not have been like quite as into it as myself or you jellyfishing and things like that. But I mean, they played through Breath of the Wild. They loved it. I think that the beginning of the game, and throughout, not just the beginning, I think through a big majority of the game, there is a kind of you kind of feel the magic, and it just draws you in so deep.
Yeah.
And it grabs a hold of you, and it does not let go for a very long time throughout the whole journey of the game. And I think that it's in such a way that speaks way beyond what a lot of the most recent Zelda titles were doing. It hits beats just so well. And the fact that Nintendo kind of did open world like this.
On what type of beats you're talking about. Because I would argue that you could argue that there was things Skyward Sword did better than this game.
Sure. I would say this. I think the areas this game kind of,
I guess, focused on,
the things I kind of find myself wishing were improved generally are things that are like, hey, other Zelda games have done this.
Yeah.
They're things that, not so much like I want open world to change, like any of the new conventions. I feel like all the new stuff they did really well, generally speaking. But the things I kind of pull back and be like, these were kind of my stuff I didn't really like, are things that are because of Zelda stuff, Zelda conventions.
Yeah. I definitely think that if this wasn't a Zelda game, I would maybe say be more 100% positive.
Interesting. So you think it's Zelda pedigree in a way almost holds it back?
I think in some ways, I mean, I think because it has, any game that has previous expectations is gonna run the risk of
alienating.
Yeah, alienating or just not meeting those expectations. So even, I mean, the only time you don't hit that is when the sequel is pretty much a polished version of the prequel.
Yeah.
And this is technically a different genre. I mean, it's still adventure. It still captures all the important Zelda feelings. But with so many things in the series, there's going to be things that you're like, okay, I liked how this game handled it better. Or this game had this and this one doesn't. Things like that. I feel like that's just part of being a series more than anything.
Yeah. I can see that.
I mean, it's interesting because I look at it and I go, would I give this game a perfect score? I honestly think I would. Yeah. Just on the notion that I think it's that worth playing. Because I don't think I don't think any game ever is a perfect score. But in that same notion, I would say, because I don't think I think if you are ever getting a Switch, I mean, heck, just if you're into games, I think Breath of the Wild is going to be an enjoyable experience, at least somewhat of the game. I'm not going to say it's perfect for everyone because, whatever. But, I think for a vast majority of people, the way this game enchants you within the first couple beats is just so dang cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that a lot of people would resonate all across the board.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard...
Now, the further you get in...
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I've heard people that did not necessarily like Zelda games that really got into this one. So I'd say it has widened its audience a bit, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about this last podcast, but this is the highest attach rate to any launch title ever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's not that many that like competition for it.
Yeah, I think that is valid, but I do think it's like still like it's not like every launch has been like absolutely amazing because but the Super Nintendo launch was Super Mario World, and it was like and that's considered a classic of all time. And
it's like what else did that have?
I think there's obviously. I think there's differences, and that's not a be all end all, but at the same time, I think it is of note. Anywho, let's dive into the meat of it. Let's talk about. We've mentioned some negative things. I don't know if I necessarily want to jump into that because I feel like we have said so much. There is so much of like. I feel like as we're going to talk about this game, there's going to be like an agreed like awesome. Like there's this awesomeness that we all agree on. And then we could talk about the stuff we don't like.
Maybe we should talk about, like, maybe our favorite zone or our favorite race or something.
Oh, racism.
Well, I was just going to ask, like...
Here we go. Racism.
Our favorite race.
Aliens.
White people.
Those gurus.
Uh-oh, I shouldn't... I'm going to regret saying that. Right. I was going to say, I'm going to regret saying that. Having that on... I'm going to have that...
recorded now.
People are going to have that recorded. They're going to be able to quote me out of context all the time. Raid. My favorite race is white people. Oh no. Let's just do this. So, if the game is, we all agree the game is good.
Have a JonTron thing happen.
Oh no. Oh, okay. Can of worms. That's that's another podcast topic. Why is the game so good then? If we all agree that it's got a lot of good to it, why? Why is the game so dang good?
I think. Well, I mean, I feel like you obviously can't have any of the good aspects kind of by themselves because none of these aspects carry the games by themselves. So I think that's kind of a hard question. But I do think one of my the things that I think stood it apart in its quality is that because it gave you all the tools really early, the creativity in which you could use them was expanded, and I think that really deepened the ability to like do puzzle solving and just kind of navigate the world in general.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the reasons that's I guess stands it out for being good compared to other Zelda games. But again, like you can't say that giving all the tools early on is good without saying, oh yeah, well the puzzle design was also good and like the physics were good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
What do you think, Travis? What do you think makes this stuff so good? Why do you think Zelda has done the Breath of the Wild has been so interesting?
So I put a lot of thought into why. Like personally, I really liked the game, and like I looked at all the individual aspects, and it's kind of like what Sosi was saying. It's like this by itself wouldn't have really worked that well, but having everything together is what really made it. Like, I mean, Cooking Mama is probably a better cooking game than Breath of the Wild, but having all of these things together worked really well. And the thing that I really I was thinking about like what is absolutely brand new from Breath of the Wild, and it's pretty much just like there's the cooking and then the completely overworld, like open world feeling. Everything other than that was like something that was in previous Zelda games that is done better here. Like we have Skyward Sword where like you have the whole, like you're in the action and like you switch weapons while you're still like, in the game. You would have your own separate pause menu for the weapons and everything. And then, you heal while you're drinking the potion while you're running around and all that thing. And like a lot of these like aspects of the game were from other games, and also the whole breakable shields and things like that. Like you see them in other Zelda games, but they were kind of, I guess, weak and not as exciting. But in this,
it was more of like you could just burn your shield.
Well, in Skyward Sword they would break. In Skyward Sword they would break, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you got the what's it called?
You had to get the Sacred Shield or whatever.
And the Hylian Shield, right? I thought the Hylian Shield.
It was one of the yeah.
Eventually,
it's one of the two.
But
yeah,
I mean, so there's these different aspects, and the whole collecting items to make potions and things. Like that, I could say that was cool in Skyward Sword, but like, how often did I actually use it? Not very often at all. But like, this game is so like intriguing and fun that
Couldn't
you
make-
don't mind going out to collect some weird dragonfly to make this awesome, dish or potion that you're making. And I feel like, just all of these things coming together, like the battling system. I was actually really worried about the battling system when I first was into the game. Like, I don't know, because it's not as far as Zelda games go, it's really new, but I think they did really well. They made it really well, and that how it works together with the food and all that stuff.
I feel how like you fight is actually fairly simple, as far as like it's one button to attack, one button to defend, target kind of deal.
Yeah, but with the parry systems and and some of the other dodging, and it's more, and a lot of it is the enemies, and then with the way the enemies work.
Yeah.
Because like Z targeting is obviously something Ocarina of Time made.
Yeah, that's a Zelda thing that will probably never go away.
Yeah. Interesting. I think, you guys have talked some good points. I think the thing for me that, and I keep using the word magical because like when you start the game with Link waking up in a cave, having no memories of anything.
It has been done before.
And you kind of just walk out and you look around and you're like, okay, what do I do? And then the game is at that point. I think there's like a little cutscene, but pretty much like you're kind of naturally led over to where the old guy is, and the old guy, you talk to him and he tells you about heading to the tower. I think it is. Actually, I don't remember if it's the cutscene that tells you or if it's the old man or a mix of both.
First.
Well, you go to the tower, you activate the tower, then you go meet the king over at the temple.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, you have to climb all the way up, and that's when he reveals himself or whatever. But it's just like you enter the game in such a way that you kind of feel almost exactly like Link in the way that it's just like everything is open to you, and the game also lets you feel like that by not having any invisible walls. Everything is climbable. The main way the game discourages you from doing something is by like making it look imposing or challenging, whether by rough monsters or like it's like, oh, I don't have enough stamina.
Possible.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, and that level of like it really immerses you in such a way, and like because it is such a departure from previous Zelda games, like you're like, I don't know any of the mechanics of this game really. You get introduced into the shrines pretty early, but even when you leave the Great Plateau, like there's a lot still to discover about how the game and the world works, and all of those things create just such this engaging, like it gives you that desire to explore and to kind of push the boundaries, and the game almost always rewards you for that. Exploring is absolutely encouraged, and like even when you find like a camp of moblins or whatever, like the game, depending on how you're exploring, will give you like little ways to like obliterate the camp, and especially in the Great Plateau, like there are a lot of moblin camps that like high above there's like a bunch of rocks or whatever, and you're like, I wonder if I could push those over, and bada bing bada boom, you totally can. And just like, and I think it's hard because as the game progresses and as you get later and later into the game, and especially as you start wrapping up, that feeling disappears or falls a bit into the background. But like when I started, like that feeling was just overwhelmingly cool. Of just like and you leave the Great Plateau and you can literally go whatever direction you want, and the game always feels that way until you start wrapping up. And I think to me, and all these little systems you guys have talked about with the way the combat works, with the way the recipes and all that stuff, and the kind of rethinking the conventions, I feel like everything in the game is designed to keep up that aspect.
What order did you go in, Jelly?
Yeah.
Okay, so
where did you go?
I started with Zora's Domain.
We did the same.
Well, did you like go to Kakariko Village first? I'm assuming.
So I went to Kakariko Village first, and then I actually, when she told you about the was it the research lab or whatever? I went straight there after Kakariko.
Yeah, that's what we did. That's what we did.
And then after that, I went to Zora's Domain because like I was gonna explore for a bit, but then there were like 3 Zoras. They're like, "You need to go," so I'm like, "All right, fine."
Yeah,
you got caught up.
for a while.
They're like everywhere, no matter where you go. They're like, "Hey, I'm playing in the water," but
because he had sent people out to search.
Yeah, we had we found one of the towers, and I just picked a direction and jumped off it, and we landed in one of the areas where one of the Zoras was. And I was like, oh, shoot, sorry, dude, I'm still on my way to the tech lab, so I was like, I'll just get this shrine right here, and I'll be back. But, because we had, like, a really long detour between, like, leaving the plateau and actually making it to the Zora's Domain.
Yeah, we explored, like, the whole
south
corner. Yeah, the whole
south, that would be
section.
East.
Just pretty much the whole southern section between Gerudo and Zora's Domain we covered.
Cool.
Well, we didn't quite hit. Yeah, well, we did kind of hit.
We got to the Red Mountain area.
Well, yeah, we got to where the special the black horse was.
Yeah.
The Ganon horse.
Yeah.
And then we did like Hateno Village. We did Lurelin Village.
Mm-hmm.
We did like all that area before we.
So
did
it felt like between all the rest of the things that felt like really short, just because we took so long to do the first one.
Because then we did Zora's, then we did the Akala region, then we did Goron, Gerudo, Rito.
Wow, that was the same as me.
Pretty much like that. Yeah.
Oh, so you went counterclockwise too.
Yeah, well, I was just like, okay, I did Zora's. Like, who do I like the most? The Gorons. So I went and saved the Gorons.
Yeah. Yeah. And like...
The Gerudo town was hilarious, though.
I think we did the Zora stuff, and then we were just hitting the Akala region because it was close. And we're like, oh yeah, there's that other researcher apparently there or whatever. And they mentioned that the Gorons had like this blacksmith. And we were like, oh, this could be cool.
Craft armor.
We might have something to do with all this ore we've been holding on to just in case. And it ended up not being it.
It was disappointing.
Because I think we were probably going to do the Gerudo.
The blacksmith was just the guy who would fix your special weapon.
Yeah, we were going to do the Gerudo next, but then we did the Goron, and then it was like we were doing the Terry Town stuff, and they're like, we need a seamstress. And
wait, we didn't go counterclockwise because we went...
We
did Gerudo after Goron, and then the...
Yeah, we crossed over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of the, and that's actually kind of funny that we did the same stuff. I know I was reading a lot of different impressions about people going different orders, but even then, it sounds like you went to Zora's Domain sooner than we did.
Yeah. Like, I went there pretty soon. I did most of my exploring after I finished Zora's Domain. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Zora's Domain.
Like, if I did it again, I probably would have done Rito first because his power is super useful for exploring, and we had already seen everything by the time we got it.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, when I did the Rito last, I felt like they almost wanted you to do that one first, maybe. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression
too.
It
seemed easier.
But it's the other side of the map from it's the furthest away.
Yeah, but then like
that's the thing though. You can go any direction.
Also tells you like all these really simple things that you like should understand before like you get there.
Right.
Like he's like, "Oh, make sure you're warm." And he says it like 3 times. It's like, "Okay."
I think it's semi-feasible for someone to do Rito Village first.
I know.
Just because the pathway north, and like if you go near Hyrule Castle will actually kind of lead you there with some of the stables.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one I could see. If anyone did Gerudo Desert first, my mind would be blown.
Because like to me, like this is what I see it as is like I feel like the Zora is the easiest to do first because it's the only one that doesn't require special clothing. And I felt like at least for me, I thought Hyrule Castle was super intimidating. I didn't even want to go close to there.
Yeah.
So that was something that I was like, okay, I'm probably going to do the southeast or southwest first.
The moment I decided I wasn't going to go near Hyrule Castle was when I tried to get the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember getting to the tower in
front
of
Hyrule
Hyrule
there's
Castle?
Just 2.
And there's like 3 guardians all walking around. I'm like, well, I'm here, so I'm going to try and get it. But like, as soon as I get it, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And here, actually, let me make a little point on that I'm thinking, like once you got like the Master Sword and stuff, and like you get we got to this point in the game where guardians were no longer scary.
Yeah.
And like and I don't want to say that that's a bad thing because that's natural, but it's like honestly that kind of killed a lot of the magic because like.
Well, I mean, they were still scary in that they could still like almost one-shot you if you let them get their laser off. But
yeah, I suppose. I just remember hitting a point where it was like, oh, like all I have to do to be a guardian is go and cut off its legs and then just shoot one arrow anytime he's close to getting his laser off, and I'll never miss. And it just like, and from that point on, like, because I remember when I was just dinking around Kakariko Village, I saw a guardian just like wandering around this area, and I like flipped. I was like, oh my gosh, and like we booked it out of there.
Or anytime, or like we'd always be afraid that it saw us.
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
scary. Yeah,
that piano music.
because it can see really far away.
Yeah, and like as cool as the Guardians were, I still think, and like I remember when we saw our first Tantalus, whatever they're called, the Talus, the rock monster.
Oh yeah.
That was really cool.
It got kind of old by the end.
Yeah, they did get a bit old by the end.
But where it's like, oh, it's another rock monster. I thought it was just a bull.
I just remember when we were climbing, and all of a sudden the rock starts moving, and we're like, oh my god, you were on it. And it, yeah, we were on it, and it was just like, and it was just...
The Pebblets were like the cutest enemy in the game. I felt I couldn't kill them. They were like too beautiful.
Yeah, the Pebblets.
I love
but like,
sorry.
In my opinion, the best enemy by far are the Lynels. No question.
Because they're hard every time.
Lynels, I think, are what, like, if we're going to talk what I want to see in the future, I want to see more in the style of Lynel. And not just, like, ridiculously hard, but, like, just, like, that same level of complexity. And Lynels just were always impressive.
And they were more complex enemies, and also in, like, what kind of character they were, too. Because, like, I mean, Moblins and like, the other versions of Moblins, like, the tall ones... Like, they all acted the same. And, like, Lizalfos pretty much all acted the same. But, like, Lynels... I mean, like, they all were just like, let's go after you. Where Lynels were like, I'm not going to attack you unless you have your sword out. I'm smart enough to figure out disguises. I can see you from forever. I have multiple weapons. Like... Yeah. I'm just saying, like, the complexity is way higher.
Yeah. I think the issue with Bokoblins, Lizalfos, and Moblins are...
I'm just saying their AI was super similar.
Well, yeah, okay, they were similar, but I mean, like, Moblins would do stuff. Like, I don't know if you were there when he threw Bokoblins at me.
Yeah, and
which is hilarious.
And they'll kick the bombs away, and...
Well, and they'll do a thing, like, I got them to, like, fight over each other's weapons. Like, I knocked the weapon out of one hand, and then he stole another, like, Moblin stole the weapon, and the other Moblin got mad at him.
Serious?
And I was able to get, like, hits on him. And, yeah, like, there's a lot of cool little interactions like that. And, like, I never tried this a ton, but, like, with Lizalfos, you can drop insects, and they'll go chasing after him.
Really?
And try to eat them and stuff like that.
Yeah, it just always feels like, I guess, Lynels are the only ones that had, like, a decent level of sentience, it felt like.
Yeah. There's no question that, like, there's not a lot of, like, pressure to try stuff like that on Lizalfos and Bokoblins and Moblins because they are so much more straightforward. Yeah. It's great for, like, a little tweet or whatever. But, like, Lynel's always impose. Anyway, sorry, Travis, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, one thing I thought was cool about all the enemies is that they scale depending on where you're at and how strong you are, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I think, for Zelda.
The weapons did that, too. The weapons you'd find.
Was way cool. And, like, you know, you'd see the white bokoblin, and the first time I saw one, I was like, I got owned. I was like, what? But then I was like, all right,
their HP is ginormous.
Yeah, and then I'm just like, all right, I won't fight them. And then the first time I killed them, I'm like, oh, they give off ore, like good ore.
Yeah. And they're usually holding good weapons too.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. And Lynels as well, you know. Once you get into the strong Lynels, it's like crazy.
White mane Lynels. And, like, there's a lot of cool YouTube videos of people, like, I think the most recent one I saw is it's one guy fighting two white Lynels without taking any damage.
Really?
And it's just like lots of cool stuff like that. And I think enemy variety, like a couple more enemy types would have been helpful.
Yeah, well, like, we kept seeing new enemies, and then, like, after about 2 divine beasts, felt like all the same.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first time we saw the Is it Moblin that's the bigger or the small?
Moblins are bigger, Bokoblins are the small
okay.
ones.
The first time we saw a Moblin was cool. The first time we saw Lizalfos was cool, and then like, and that's pretty much it after a while.
Yeah, I mean, so what? Like enemies are the Bokoblins, Lizalfos, Moblins. You have Choo-Choos.
Mm-hmm.
And Lionels.
You have Lionels. You have Keese, the bats,
And the rock guys.
and the big bat swarm was cool. Yeah, the Talus, I think is what we're called. Talus and Peblets and Hinox. And then the undead dudes.
Yeah, so I mean that's around less than 10 enemy types, unincluding skeletal versions.
Right.
And so that's not that many.
Yeah.
I mean, they all have like different like colors and elemental, things, but
it's actually only the Lizalfos that do it.
They only do
I guess like Keese and stuff.
But they have each of those kinds have similar attack patterns. So all it does is like, I mean, it increases the difficulty, and I think that's important. But I do think having a variety in attack patterns is good.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it, because there's no question when you think of like the main enemies of the game, it is Bokoblins, Lizalfos, and Moblins.
Okay, I was like, I thought you meant like poster child enemy, and I was like,
no, I mean like just like when
the mini guardian.
Oh yeah, and then there's the different kind of guardians.
Yeah,
which there's 4 kinds,
and then
there's turret, flying, big,
and then there's wild,
and there's shrine guardians,
attack you sometimes, which I thought was cool. Wild animals.
Yeah.
Wild guardians.
Wild animals.
Oh, wild animals. Yeah.
But yeah, which is nice. But the like. Aside, like the guardians, the little guardian fights, like especially the ones in the shrines, are designed to like work with like how weapons work, kind of a thing. Like they'll have a spear, an axe, or a sword, and then they'll do the charge move, which you can use different things to block, and you can use.
I feel like they're definitely trying to teach you stuff with the guardians and the shrines.
Yeah, and they're definitely like kind of. Like I remember I walked in one and the floor was water, and I was like, okay, so I know I can use cryosis somehow, and that was just apparently to block the laser when they're almost dead. And there's ones with like the magnet ones you can lift up, and that will block that spin attack they do. But anyways, and so those kind of, I think more fights like that would have been good for the combat, because once a lot of, like, that's why I think Lionel stand supreme so well, is because they were sparse enough that when you did see them, that them being so hard, it never felt like you got to this point where it was like I never fought a Lionel and kind of went into autopilot. Like I always had to make sure I was paying attention. And I think even though like, because a game can never be like, oh yeah, Guardians will always just be ball bustingly hard.
Yeah.
And I also think
like if there's going to be any kind of progression, I feel like, but there should at least be a way
Lionels
to have.
Never felt like you had to fight them. Like, I mean, you had to get good stuff. Sometimes you had to, but like
for sure,
they were usually pretty remote areas.
I read a lot of people who did the Zora's Domain quickly, and you know Travis or Jellyfish, you might be able to speak to this. But you had to get the shock arrows.
Yeah, you didn't.
And there was a Lionel guarding them. Did you end up fighting him? Did you end up fighting, or did you try to steal him?
I snuck around and stole them because there was no, like, I couldn't, like, it was too good. And I wasn't.
Yeah.
It was the first one I'd really seen, so I was like.
Yeah, we got owned by the first one.
Yeah, and that's super cool. That is such a cool little thing they do. Yeah, there were some fights I got heated, but it was like
Hyrule Castle, cool. Like I saw it, I was like, oh, I can probably just sneak around and not get killed by some guardians. I was just like going on my horse, and then but, when you're in an open field and a guardian with your horse with like no weapons or anything, it's not necessarily a good place to be fighting a guardian that can walk. So like I went there and got one-shotted. And I was like, all right, I'll just stay away from Hyrule Castle.
Did your horse die? Did your horse die?
Gone. You can get in there just fine, but you have to go certain ways.
Yeah, I'm tempted to try a playthrough to see if I can make it through, and I doubt I could beat Ganon, but to at least see if I can
get all those awesome weapons in Hyrule, which will definitely help you.
Yeah, that's true. So that's I do think, like, if we were to say, hey, what do we want to see going forward? Like, Lionels for me again are like what I want to see.
I also think it would have been nice to kind of offered more different combat situations. Like, I know it just felt like all the Moblin camp or Bokoblin camps felt all the same after a while.
Okay.
Like, in the shrines and stuff, they put you in the situations where, yeah, it's really opportunity to use either magnets or maybe like the ice block to help you with the fight. But you almost never do that in real life unless you're just messing around. There's never a situation where it's like, oh, it'd be really advantageous for me to use a different tactic other than what I normally do. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes there's like bomb barrels or something.
Yeah, unless like you clearly see something like, oh, look, I can do something from up here or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's generally like you handle everyone relatively straightforwardly.
Yeah, so I'm saying like maybe having different fights be trickier in due to the situation. And then they could get away with less complicated enemies.
I felt like there was a decent amount of variety, like different ways you could do things, but maybe that was just me. I did lots of weird things, so.
Oh, I agree, but I'm just saying, like, for someone who isn't necessarily like super into combat in the first place, I'm less likely to experiment unless the situation kind of calls for it. Because if it's like a camp, it's like, okay, I'm going to try to pick some off, and then I'm just going to go in with my sword, and if there's bomb barrels, I'll go for that. But there's very rarely that I'm like, oh, a metal box, it's worth it for me to stand exposed with my magnet to kill someone with a bomb. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
And
even, except for funsies, you know, so.
Well, and that could be a mix of, like, maybe smarter bokoblins or whatever, like, will hide behind cover kind of a thing. And it's like, oh, he's always hiding by this block and, like, shooting an arrow. And that's the time it's like, I know, I'll drop a block onto him. Or just those kind of varied combat situations that kind of push you to look for different
I guess I think pushing for alternative is what I was thinking. Because they only really do that in the shrines.
Yeah. I think,
I'm not saying that the combat's bad or there's not room to experiment. I'm just saying it never really... And I mean, not that this game should make you do anything, because I think that's one of the reasons it's great. But there was never, like, a camp where I'm like, oh yeah, I should definitely, like, rock the magnet with this one. I don't know.
Here, let's do some. I know there's been some differently discussed stuff in different circles that I think we should probably delve into. I want to say that from my perspective, the game is very strong, but loses some momentum near the end, especially as you become more familiar with the game in general, and some of that magic starts to fade. There are some more egregious stuff, and so I want to kind of go into the stuff that's kind of more complained about and see what your guys' takes are. So let's do this one. Let's not take too much time on this, but let's do weapon durability. How did you guys feel? Did you feel that it was a good idea? Do you feel like they did it well? Do you feel like it was a bad idea, shouldn't have done it? Do you think it was a good idea, but maybe it wasn't, it was a little too punishing? Where do you kind of fall on the whole weapon durability?
All right. Can I go?
Yeah, absolutely. You dropped down that all right. We knew you had something coming.
All right, so at the start of the game, I really felt like the weapons were way too weak. Like, they just died out way too fast because, you'd get a weapon and you're like, yes, I love this weapon. And then one or two fights and it's gone. So at the very start of the game, I was like, oh my gosh, this is annoying. But then as you get farther into the game, you realize, okay, this is what this weapon type is. This is what this weapon type is. Like, at first you'd see a lance and you're like, oh, it does 20 damage. That's horrible. But then you think about, oh yeah, you can stab lances like 20 times a second. And it kind of got you used to different kinds of weapons, which I think was pretty cool. And then, like, really late game is when I started liking the weapon durability because it made you search for stronger weapons that could last longer. So what I did is I ended up getting the, like, what is it? The ancient armor? Is that what they call it in English?
Okay, yeah.
And so I got the ancient armor. I'm like, all right, I just want to get all these ancient weapons. And so that's what I ended up doing.
Right.
The ancient weapon.
Are they durable? I never got one.
Oh, really? Yeah, they're pretty durable. And
Yeah.
also, when you have the set bonus, they do more damage, and they're just better. And so,
Oh, if you have the Guardian
Oh.
armor, the Guardian weapons do
yeah,
more damage?
they do if you have the whole set. Yep.
Wow.
So yeah,
Okay.
That sounds pretty powerful.
and so
So if
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. So if you're, doing the next Zelda game, would you continue to have durability as a mechanic in your Breath of the Wild 2?
I would say yes.
Majora's.
At first, I hated it,
Cape.
and then I was like, I get the Master Sword, and I can't even use it. Like, that kind of made me mad, and I was like, what about all those other Zelda games where Link used the Master Sword all the time? This Master Sword's weak sauce.
And then,
Right.
I think we love the Sheikah armor too much to invest in the...
Dude, the
That's
Sheikah
what we
armor,
have,
anytime I could, I would ride around the Sheikah armor. Once I found out that you got that permanent stealth buff, it was like, nothing. Animal materials don't run away from you. Enemies rarely notice you.
I never used the Sheikah armor once.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
In your next
that was like
playthrough,
how we
dude,
played like at least 75% of the game.
because you
Sheikah
could
armor.
get, depending
You
on...
could pick up grasshoppers, they wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, and you could like sneak strikes tons of people if you approached it right.
Yeah.
And
I feel like
especially
I
once
did
you get
that
the
anyways,
stasis upgrade. Good.
But yeah, I know.
I guess we didn't have to be as sneaky because we had the Sheikah armor on.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier, I'm sure.
So Shido, what do you think about durability?
So I kind of agree with Jelly in that in the beginning I did think it was a little obnoxious because not only are all your weapons crap, so they're breaking super fast, but they're actually a little rarer in the beginning because you don't have as many camps and stuff on the plateau. So you kind of are like, I have a Korok leaf, what do I do? Or and a stick, like I'm gonna die. Like I think the only kind of but it wasn't too bad. The only kind of qualm I had was when you got really like good weapons. Like I remember we got we did that one of the really hard shrines early, and so we got
the
a
major
bunch of,
test of strength.
Yeah,
before doing a single divine beast.
Yeah, and so it took like all our weapons, and we almost died, and like we seriously, I think that we had like used every weapon to kill him because everything broke. And then we got all these plus weapons, and it's like, now I never want to use these because they're so good, and we work so hard for them. And if I use them, they're just going to break. And so, like, I think that was hard in that, like, the only weapon you're allowed to get emotionally attached to is the Master Sword, which in one way, I'm like, I feel like if you're going to get emotionally attached to any weapon, it should be Master Sword, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like it'd be cool even if you could just, like, go to a blacksmith-like person and just up the durability of your favorite weapon. Or something like that, where it just like, now I can use this more, rather than like if a spear only appears so many times in a game, or you're like, has a low percentage of dropping or something, but that's like your dog spear, like it's your favorite, then you can use it more. I don't know. That's my only thing is like, I think, durability encourages you to spread out and try different things, but once you find something you like, then it's like, you can't stay there.
Interesting.
Without hoarding, I guess.
I find myself agreeing generally, like durability I was like, oh wow, this is gonna be pretty rough in the beginning, and like I don't know if it's just the way I kind of game.
And after we expanded our inventory a ton, it wasn't a big deal.
Well, I was gonna say, because like early on I was like, all right, and just the way I game, I kind of just take things and it's like, all right, so how am I gonna have to deal with this and stuff like that, and then like we got but. Thankfully, we noticed the Hetsu on the way to Kakariko Village and upgraded. And it was like, as soon as I saw I could upgrade, I'm like, more weapons. I need more weapon slots, please. Just because it's like, anytime I can find a good weapon, I need to have room for it rather than how fast And I think because your inventory is so small in the beginning,
you have like 5.
You feel it more when you lose a weapon.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much more noticeable. When you have like 6 or 7 weapons or
like I remember
whatever.
the first time we had to give up a good weapon for another good weapon. It's like, ugh. Like
you
feel like you're like sacrificing your firstborn.
And it's also hard because you also want to have room for a torch. You want to have room for a Deku leaf. Because it's one of those things you're like, I have no idea when I'm going to need these, but they've been useful enough so far.
We almost had a torch like throughout the whole game, and then
I remember dropping a decoy leaf and be like, I have not been using it. I'm just dropping it.
And then when like turn around, there's like a boat. Like no.
No.
I mean, thankfully, decoy leaves are pretty hard to find. You figure out you just really need to chop some trees down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think having that
Pretty
really
easy to find.
limited weapon inventory, like, is kind of what makes it feel so crazy. Because there's no question, by the end of the game, I was fine. Like, you would do a camp, you blow through a weapon or two, but because you killed like 4 guys, you got 5 new weapons, and you could pick and choose, and you had your weapons to use for rough moments, you had your weapons to use just to get through medium stuff.
I actually think in some ways I do like the early frustration, just because it makes the later like success more satisfying.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I think that's a really important point, because I was going to say this. I think this game is at its coolest and at its best. With the way it is set up, independent of any Zelda conventions or anything like that, I think that Breath of the Wild is funnest on something like Eventide Island.
Yeah.
I think, to me, that's kind of the pinnacle of what the coolness of that game is.
And then, I mean, the whole first half of the game feels like Eventide.
Exactly,
Island.
because the whole first part of the game feels like a giant Eventide Isle, where you're like, hey, I gotta get stuff
I got
done.
nothing.
But like, there could be a guardian around any corner. There could be a town. There could be materials I need. There could be a bear I could ride. I don't know.
You said you really liked Eventide, right, Jelly?
I loved it. Kind of.
I hate crap like that, but I understand why people like it. To me, it's just like so stressful.
Well,
I'm just an anxious person.
No, I think like Eventide is stressful because it's a small, narrow area with a very
and you
specific.
can't save. If you could save, it'd be different.
And they kind of like, they're like, when you start the game, like, the game is very quick to let you know, hey, by the way, if you do an enemy fight wrong, they'll obliterate you.
Yeah.
Like, even Bokoblins in the beginning are like, and when you first come across a moblin, like, he'll hit you with his spear, you'll go flying down the hill, and you'll fall off a cliff, you'll die.
Yeah.
Like, bye.
You're out
the
of
game
stamina,
shows very
and
little
then he hits
pity.
you into the water.
But,
Yeah.
but there's also not that...
You drown.
But I think the game also encourages that kind of experimentation because there's not a huge punishment for dying.
Right. So what and that's where Eventide Isle gets more stressful, because you feel that loss a lot more. I think that's smart that most of the
Especially
game
if
has
you're planning
that
out,
quick save.
If you're planning out like for half an hour to an hour trying to kill the last guy and then he falls on you.
Oh man, yeah, I had the thing where I knocked him down, but his like,
I was
foot
like on this island
came
for 3
down
hours.
on me or whatever, and I died trying to get that last orb.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah, that's right.
He
We talked
falls
about
on
it.
you, and you're like,
But
"Oh."
I think
You're fat.
I think what you guys are talking about, and what Karen kind of brought up, or Socio, sorry, I'm dropping people's real names, should be kind of married with the crafting system. And what Socio...
So you can be as prepared as you want to be?
Well, what Socio said in regards to, like, there's kind of a lot... Like, weapons feel kind of scarce in the beginning. I think it would be interesting if... Or getting attached to weapons. That was what you brought up. I think it'd be interesting if, I would even maybe make it so, like, weapons are just really hard to find in general. And so when you do find one, you do get attached. But with a lot of the crafting stuff, you can keep like a weapon alive, and that way the loss of a weapon, like whether it's like you're crafting like maybe stuff to like keep it more durable, or maybe you're like, hey, I want to put a fire enchantment on the sword, and you go through your crafting stuff. Because the other day, Karen and I talked about improving the cooking system,
Because I made we were talking about how like there's so
a recipe
there's
list
so many
is
different,
a big sin.
Yeah, having a recipe book would be awesome, but not only that, but like there's like in each category there's like, once you figure out the good recipe, like why make anything else? And I felt like the cooking system was so complicated that they could have made a lot of really interesting quests with it. And then another thing was like all the potions. While the cooking system was super advanced, the potion system where you or elixir, I guess, where you just put in a monster part and a critter, like that was like not advanced at all.
Yeah, I never made one, not even one.
Yeah. If you
I made a couple, and I did lots of experimentation. I was like kind of the cook in our run, because I would do elixirs, and like like with cooking, the more food you put in of different things, like the better your outcome is usually most of the time. But with like elixirs, you could put like a bunch of rare monster parts and rare critters together, and it's like about the same.
Yeah.
So like felt really like just kind of dumb.
Well, and I'd like to see the notions of recipes and things like that expanded further into the realm of like whether it's like adding additions to your weapon, even if it has to be at a specific place, like a blacksmith or something, or like being able to sit down and like make arrows
with sticks.
Right, like grab your sticks and like if you do have something sharp in your inventory, you can plop out a bunch of arrows or whatever, and just like. And I think if you made with stuff like that, like if you could make a bunch of crap weapons yourself for like whatever scenario, but then make it so when you do find enemies with cool weapons, but make that really rare, and then you can still kind of journey with those weapons, that you might be able to add to that attachment and kind of add that with the cooking thing and like, you know, have a quest be like, hey, you know, my son is sick, but I hear that the Gerudo have this awesome recipe, and you're over in Hateno Village, and so you have to like journey to Gerudo and like do quests for them, and they'll start giving you clues about how they make their stuff.
Yeah.
And then like maybe someone says they'll teach you,
Another thing,
unlock it in a recipe book, go back.
Another thing that made me a little upset is like with the weapon system, you get these 4 awesome weapons from each of the races, and you know you can break them and fix them. But at the same time, the fact that you can break them at all makes them seem not worth it.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're going to break them after a few kills, and then they're just going to take up a spot in your inventory. So we just hung them up in our house.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I'm like, there was some potential there that was lost.
Yeah. And so I think if you work well with the crafting system, you can maybe make the fact that you do go through weapons more meaningful. I was just going to say, I think there could be some tweaks made to the durability system, but I think this sounds more engaging to me, and with the way Breath of the Wild works, you could push this
you obviously
further.
don't want to make it too complicated, especially without a way of tracking it. Like, that's why the recipe book was so vital.
It is a mandatory thing, in my opinion, that there be a way to track something like that. And I even think it's I'm not going to say like the game is terrible because of it, but I think it's really, really bad that there's not a recipe book. I mean, I think it's kind of neat that it's like, oh yeah, you know, you go find and you just kind of have to remember recipes. But at the same time, it's like, still, like, we have, like, recipes books exist for a reason, for this very reason.
I'll argue that.
Like, I was so upset, like, in the Rito Village, they're like, hey, look, there's a recipe book over there. And I'm like, a recipe book? And it's like, oh, no, you can't buy it. Like,
it's just there on the
It's just on,
Were you going to say you'd argue?
Yeah, totally. I don't want a recipe book.
Okay.
At
Really?
first, I thought I wanted it, but the thing I like about not having a recipe book is, and you know, like, oh, there's this one recipe that I will make all the time. Is like, specifically at the start of the game, you have lots of random things that you don't know, like okay, yeah, I like this recipe, but then I can't make it. Like, what else can I mix and match and still make it work? I don't know. I kind of had a lot of fun with that, and I definitely think there's a reason they didn't have a recipe book. And I mean, if you wanted to, you could keep track of the really important recipes. I just think it's hard
because they're...
And even if you did want a certain, like, you know, you really like one certain recipe, do you need a recipe book for your one favorite recipe? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the problem is, like, I had a couple favorite recipes per trait that I wanted to remember, and between playing sessions, that was really hard.
I just took a picture.
Well, and that's why I think...
Yeah, but I feel like if you're just going to take a picture, the game should do that for you. I don't know.
Well, I think the way I kind of envision it is more like the amount of things you can make might be a bit more limited, or in the sense that it's like I would kind of see it as like you get a cookbook or whatever, but like it's the whole thing where it's like all the pages are blank, and even then it's like, you know, like you might highlight a recipe. You highlight a recipe. That's so true. You highlight a recipe and it's like there's 3 question marks for the ingredients, kind of a thing. And even then, like, if you find, and you can even, like, find substitutes or whatever, or spin-offs, or like, hey, you were trying to use this with a different ingredient.
You're trying to do apple pie, but you put a berry in it.
And you made this whole new thing. And, like, even if you make a new thing, you would, like, if you did something on accident, like, maybe it would even do a thing where, like, you'd have the new item and it would tell you all about it, but, like, the standard ingredients would still be question marks. You just, like, found out one of the things you needed. or that sort of a thing. That way, it still is like, oh, I want to experiment, and then have it be like, hey, these are very specific ones, and like I would make it so you would have to figure out what high level recipes are, and that would usually be with
how many tries did it take you to figure out how to make the monster cake, Jelly?
The monster cake?
Don't they tell you? Don't they tell you what it needs?
Have you finished building the town yet?
I think it did. I don't think it took me that long, but
okay.
I'm pretty sure it told you. Like it pretty much straight out
says that it needed monster seasoning, but I guess if you've been able to make cake before, you probably.
I think the only thing. Well, don't they?
They don't list the ingredients for you. They just say there's a monster. I remember because I did the quest.
Okay, fair enough.
But they say it needs monster stuff, and so like originally I was trying to just put monster parts in it, but it's actually like the weird guy sells the monster seasoning that I'd use to make the monster soup.
Yeah.
And so I made cake first, and then I did the cake and put the monster thing in it, and that's how it worked.
Right, but like I think the Terrytown, it's that old lady who bakes cakes who tells you pretty much like, oh, this is the recipe.
Did she actually give you the full recipe?
Maybe. I think she does. I think the hard thing there is like, oh, you have to hunt down the monster, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you have to do some quests.
Yeah, that was annoying.
But yeah, anyways. All right, I think we've touched on some interesting stuff. But again, I think this game, at its core, like the way everything is set up, I think there's two parts where it's best. When you're just starting and you're still learning and figuring everything out. Mm-hmm. And then I think the way the game can maintain that level of interesting is through more challenges like Eventide.
Yeah.
I think shrines were cool.
Do you feel like the game would be too like fractured if every new section it was just like every new Metroid game is like, guess what? You accidentally lost all your equipment. Like that just seems kind of forced.
I'm not gonna say every section has to be like Eventide in the sense that it's like, hey, you lose all your stuff and you have to start over. I just think more in the sense that it's like, okay, like here stuff is going to be really limited, or it's like in this trial, like I guess Eventide is kind of strips away some of the like the safeties you've built up and kind of forces you to really kind of push all of the systems again. Mm-hmm. And I think just more opportunities like that. And like some of those can be totally woven into like the way the story works, which is a good segue if we want to really push this discussion late.
Well, I actually need to break for bed, so I might let you guys finish up.
But I just think you can like work it in such a way that it's like as part of this story quest, you might have to like. Well, I mean, heck, the Yiga clan was kind of that way. The Yiga clan infiltration.
Because then you suddenly had to like focus on.
Because they made it that if you tried to brute force it, you would usually get wrecked.
Yeah, and that's like they.
I mean, there were some.
Forward too, in lots of games, you lose your sword
absolutely.
For
I think
dungeon.
Right, and I think like with the way Breath of the Wild works, there were some definite ways to kind of cheese your way through the Yiga clan stuff, more so than on something like Eventide. But Eventide is arguably like one of the hardest ways of doing this style. Like just straight up like, hey, you are back to square one. Have fun. Good luck. But anyways, so yeah, if you're gonna jump out, we'll say goodbye. And I don't know how much longer we'll go. We're probably already in an hour.
Jelly. Yeah, we can cut it into another episode if we want. But
yeah,
you
maybe
guys can keep talking. I don't care.
Maybe we will, because I think we need to do a big one about the story.
Yeah.
And just pretty much have that be.
Yeah, we're kind of focusing on the mechanics tonight.
Yeah, because I think the story. I think mechanically the game feels very separate. And it's when you're in the story that you start to remember, oh yeah, this is a Zelda game, and some of those flaws start to show. But how about why don't we then just call it? We'll do this. We'll pick this up next week, and we'll start from there. What? Yeah, sorry. Of course. I mean, I was gonna say, of course, if what you want to say, any other thoughts that have been come to you as we have been speaking?
Well. This is just kind of ties in what you guys were saying about the recipe book, and like, you can argue, you can disagree with me on that, and I don't care. But
I'm gonna end the stream if you try to say it again.
The recipe book is the devil. No, but
no.
I think like you can see in a lot of the aspects of the game what they were going for, and I think the recipe book is a good evidence of that. Like Nintendo's
Yeah.
really good at bringing something back to its essence, and I feel that Breath of the Wild
Yeah.
really does that well. Like, you know,
Oh, for sure.
why is Zelda like? Why was the first Zelda fun, and why was Ocarina of Time fun? Because at the time, you know, having this game where you could just go and see this huge field, and you know, there's enemies over here, and the town over here, and everything over here. Have that feeling, you know, was so fun. Like exploring, like, oh, I don't even know what's over here. I want to see. Oh man, this is too hard for me. I don't want to go here. Or this is hard. I want to do it. You know, that whole excitement of adventure. Like Breath of the Wild brought that to nailed it like 100%.
Nailed it.
More than 100% as far as my expectations go. But
I mean, that is the game to me.
Yeah,
anyway,
and I'm just, you know, they did that perfectly. Like, totally exceeded my expectations in every aspect in that amount, regardless of any weaknesses it had. So
yeah, no, I think I'm glad you said that, because I think that captures pretty well, because I kept saying like magic in the beginning, and to me what you just said is what that magic is to me. I think that, I mean, heck, Karen and I were talking the other day about when we like came across our first traveler, and like I felt like a caveman coming out of the woods. I was like, it's a person. And I was like, I want to follow you, and I want to know what you're doing, and you intrigue me. And then like it was right near that first stables or whatever, and I was like, oh, there's more people, and they're going about their business, and I want to like it just is like, I got like, you just get so hungry for that stuff. And like I mean, there's no question that one of the coolest moments of the game to me was when Socito and I decided, hey, you know, we have some of these cold resist potions. Let's go do the trek up to Lanayru's, the Spring of Wisdom or whatever. Yeah. Lanayru Mountain or whatever. Let's just see what the heck is up there.
Yeah.
And we made the long trek, and like, I was kind of running out of cold resist, and I was like, because I didn't have the cold gear. And it was like, you know, maybe this is a bit too much. And then you get all the way to the top, and you're like, wait a minute, what is that? And it's the dragon all corrupted.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, this looks intense. And I was like, there's no way I can do this right now. Like, there's got to be like, oh, there's going to be something later in the game that's going to help me do this. Like, this is looking way too cool for me to just unlock this now. And then like it flew off, or like, but I was like, oh, whatever, I'll shoot one of the little blobs. I shot the blob. It disappeared, and the dragon takes off. Yeah. I'm like, well, now it's gone. Like, there's no way. It's just gone. And then, like, I noticed the wind stuff, and you could kind of walk higher. I was like, all right, I'll check this out, and then I'll be done, and I'll move on. And then it, like, you see the wind gust. I was like, you know, I could probably fly up, and I flew up, and I was like, hey, look, it's one of the things. And I shot it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is working. And then it, like, flew down the mountain, and it continued the wind gust. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna chase it. And then it was like knocking over trees and stuff, and it was just like, man, like, and that's like a really big example, but the game was filled with little examples of that too, and to varying degrees of just like every corner was interesting. I mean, there's the story, you heard the story about when they presented it to Miyamoto, and Miyamoto's
actually,
like,
I didn't. Go ahead.
So they had the demo. So they knew kind of what game they wanted to make, and they had this little demo, and it was like pretty much what the Great Plateau was, but it wasn't quite as fleshed out, of course. And they just had lots of trees, and their idea was they're like, we want to make it so like everything is worth exploring, and so they put a lot of interesting stuff in trees. And Miyamoto, during the whole tech demo, all he did was climb trees. That's all he did. He didn't fight anyone. He just would go to each and every tree, climb up, check it out, jump down, check the next tree. It was just like, I get it. Like, that wasn't how I played the game, but I get it. And like, Miyamoto is obviously totally sold. He's like, yep, let's make this.
Climbing
this is
trees.
It. And that was all he did. And it was just like, yeah, I get that even though it wasn't trees for me, like, I had that desire to check trees. And like, even now, like, even though I'm quote unquote done with the game in my mind, I'm like, every once in a while, I look over at my Switch, and I'm like, you know, maybe I should go check out this area. It just like, that was just the game to me, and so I like what you said, because again, after all is said is done, this game is awesome. It is so good. I'm so excited for the DLC. So excited.
I wasn't sold, but now
I'm more excited for the hard mode DLC. Sorry, what was that?
And as someone who lives in Kyoto, the place where Miyamoto did his
Oh my
exploring as a
gosh.
child, I feel that this
Oh
kind
my
of thing,
gosh.
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Jesse, if not
But,
this stream, maybe
I think
next
that
stream, we
was a
need to
good
tell the getting owned by the
conclusion for
Lionel
both of us, I
story
think.
when we got those treasure chests.
Yep. So yeah, we'll wrap it up with this. Next time we'll maybe do some more stories. Honestly, I think we probably should have started with some stories because that's one of the funnest stuff is there. And like, if you want to really feel cool about this game, go read an impressions thread. Like, go find a forum where they're talking about the game and like start at the beginning and just read as people go through the game. Like, it'll bring a smile to your face just to like hear the different ways everyone tackled stuff. Like, I had a buddy, or my brother-in-law didn't even find the stinking Hetsu guide to upgrade your inventory, and I remember we told him about it, and he's like, "Wait, you can upgrade your inventory?" Stuff like that, and it was just like, and he was further, yeah, he was way further than he had done like 2 Divine Beast or something.
Yeah,
and it
I
was
did the
like,
same thing actually.
oh really? See? And it's just like, to me, that's mind blowing, but at the same time, it's just like, yeah, that's just a day in the life of Breath of the Wild, and the game is amazing when at those points. And like, for all this talk about maybe mechanics kind of wearing a little thin in some ways, like, there's no question that it is, like, at least for me, like, that feeling of adventure was so overwhelmingly strong, like you said, that it totally outshined any of my nitpicks or gripes.
Yep. Cool.
So, is this the sign to wrap it up? Is this where where we should call it
I guess so.
for today?
Yes, we'll just say. Although I had my nitpicks, which are actually pretty large, which we can talk about next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Overall,
So I say we'll set it up next week. Let's talk about. I say we do the story because there's a lot to talk about with the story, and I think that can talk about what we thought of the races and the actual way each one of those was set up, and the dungeons and the Hyrule Castle, all that stuff.
Okay, cool.
And then at the end we can give our nitpicks. But again, I don't want to end this stream without being very positive about the game because I think it deserves it. And if Nintendo did a lot of their games with this level of like sticking to the ready, I'm gonna drop this. I think the Pokemon franchise is in need of this sort of looking at and like kind of thinking about all their conventions. I think what worked the best in Sun and Moon was the same sort of like thinking about their conventions. I'm not saying it needs to be an MMO tomorrow or it needs to not be set up the way, but
Open world
I think
would be nice.
Nintendo can take these lessons. Yeah, but I can understand why Pokemon would be so ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
Because like think about all the stuff Zelda had to not do to make this work.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. So hopefully we've wet your whistle to anyone who is listening to this. Jellyfishing is always a pleasure. Please, are you still doing a lot of streaming? I know you've been busy.
Pretty much, I won't be doing streaming till I move, which is 2 weeks from
Okay.
now. But 2 weeks from now, I will be again. So,
Can people follow you on Twitter?
and that's at Jellyfish N. And if you want to check me out on Twitter, it's Jellyfish N Dame DAME. I still have that handle. so
Okay.
there you go.
So Jellyfish N for Twitch, Jellyfish N Dame for Twitter.
Yep.
So if you guys want updates for that, I'm still always kicking at Wonder Raid as both my Twitch and my Twitter handle. I'm doing Snake Pass right now, and that game has charmed me as well. And I'm hoping to do either Shovel Knight or Ukulele soon. Snake Pass is awesome though. Like seriously.
Cool.
Thumbs up. I haven't even beat it. I'm like only one world done, but it's like a miniature Breath of the Wild, where instead of finding out how everything works, you're just trying to figure out how to live life as a snake, and it works.
Like Octodad? No.
Yeah, I probably would like Octodad. I never played it. Anyways,
Oh, you would.
it's been a pleasure, everyone. I hope you all follow Jellyfish in forever. That's my hope. And that you get to play Breath of the Wild. Although again, I say play Breath of the Wild. Everyone who's here should probably have already played it because I don't want to spoil the game for you. Anyways, take care. I'm going to end the stream. Bye-bye.
See ya.